Take a trip back to the golden era of television with Good Times, 1974 to 1979, the groundbreaking sitcom that made audiences laugh, cry, and shout, "Dy-no-mite," week after week. From Florida Evans's resilience to JJ's outrageous humor, the show was more than entertainment. It was a cultural milestone that reflected real struggles and heartwarming family bonds. But what happened once the final curtain fell? Decades later, in 2025, fans are still wondering where life has taken the beloved cast members. Some continued to shine in Hollywood, others stepped away from the spotlight, and a few stories may surprise you. Join us as we look back at the stars of Good Times and discover where they are now. A nostalgic journey you won't want to miss. Jeanette Dubois was born on August 5, 1932, and when Good Times premiered in 1974, she brought to life Willona Woods at the age of 42. The neighbor with sass, flair, and unshakable presence. On television, Willona was bold, fashionable, the gossip who held secrets, yet often provided comfort and laughter to a struggling family. But Dubois's private existence was not the glossy picture her character painted. She grew up in Philadelphia, in a fractured home. Her father's absence and her mother's struggles forced her into independence early, masking pain with charm. Her early years in New York theater revealed her as ambitious but difficult. Rumors swirled of backstage screaming matches and a hunger for spotlight that made directors cautious. Though she became iconic by co-writing and singing "Movin' On Up" for the Jeffersons, Dubois's solo singing career collapsed under poor sales, marking her greatest professional humiliation. Whispers of affairs with married men, including high-profile black entertainers of the 1960s, followed her for decades. She endured a marriage clouded in secrecy, raising 4 children largely alone, and friends suggested she battled dependency on alcohol to cope with loneliness. Her daughter publicly distanced herself in the 1980s, citing Dubois's controlling nature. Industry insiders described her as manipulative, prone to leveraging her role for better pay, alienating producers. Health battles remained hidden until her sudden cardiac arrest on February 17, 2020, in Glendale, California, at 87. The revelation of her modest $2 million net worth shocked many, given her cultural impact. Most of her estate was tied up in property and royalties from "Movin' On Up." Despite decades of fame, she left a legacy of contradiction, an adored sitcom figure who secretly drowned in financial limitation, failed dreams, and the hollow silence of Hollywood's neglect. Johnny Brown, born June 11, 1937, took on the role of Nathan Bookman in 1975 at the age of 38, stepping into the sitcom landscape as the clumsy superintendent mocked as Buffalo Butt. On screen, Bookman was a constant target, yet Johnny's delivery infused the humiliation with heart, making viewers laugh while secretly sympathizing with the butt of every joke. As a character, he symbolized resilience in ridicule, but off-camera Johnny's story was far darker. Born into poverty in Florida and raised in Harlem, he grew up under the weight of economic struggle, teased relentlessly for his stutter and size, learning early to bury insecurity beneath humor. Despite undeniable charisma, his career was riddled with missed shots. He came painfully close to landing Lamont in Sanford and Son, a role that could have catapulted him to fame, but contractual ties to Laugh-In destroyed the opportunity. That single loss haunted him for decades, leaving him typecast as comic relief, something he often resented in private. Colleagues described him as warm but moody, prone to bitterness over the industry's glass ceiling for black entertainers. He wrestled with gambling habits, rumored financial quarrels with his wife, and lingering depression when roles dried up. Behind the smile, he carried frustration at being reduced to a punchline when he longed for serious recognition. He mourned friends lost to drugs and fame's cruelty, which deepened his mistrust of Hollywood. On March 2, 2022, Johnny collapsed from cardiac arrest after a pacemaker check, passing away in Los Angeles at 84. His net worth of $2 million reflected steady work, but also the industry's failure to fully value his talent, leaving a legacy of laughter tinged with the tragedy of a man who could have been so much more. Esther Rolle, born November 8, 1920, embodied Florida Evans in 1974 at age 54, projecting dignity, strength, and spiritual grit as the uncompromising mother holding the Evans family together. To audiences, she was a beacon of stability, yet the real woman behind the role carried scars carved from poverty in the cane fields of Florida, where her Bahamian immigrant parents struggled to feed 18 children. Childhood was brutal, mocked for her accent, pressured to abandon school, forced to hide ambitions beneath endless labor. That pain shaped a woman who demanded respect in an industry that thrived on stereotypes. Her career was littered with volatility, praised on stage, yet branded too difficult by television executives. On Good Times, her fury over the buffoonish portrayal of J.J.G. drove her to storm off set, her departure a scandal splashed across headlines. The humiliation of being forced out by white producers was the gravest wound to her career, painting her as impossible to work with. Behind closed doors, her marriage to Oscar Robinson unraveled under years of icy silence and bitter disputes. Childless, she poured her energy into nieces and nephews, but felt the sting of loneliness. Rolla was rumored to hold grudges for decades, refusing to attend certain events because of old betrayals. As illness consumed her, she withdrew, shunning Hollywood gatherings, often described as battling depression and bitterness in later years. On November 17, 1998, diabetes claimed her life in Culver City at 78, leaving behind an estate valued under $1 million. Her death underlined the cruel irony of an actress who fought relentlessly to elevate the image of Black families on television, yet died isolated, financially modest, and remembered more for battles fought than peace achieved. John Amos, born December 27, 1939, was just 34 when Good Times premiered in 1974. Inhabiting James Evans Sr., the proud but embattled father who became one of television's rare portrayals of Black paternal strength. His character inspired millions, but Amos himself lived a life of turbulence. Growing up in Newark with an abusive father, he escaped through football, boxing, and eventually acting, carrying rage like a second skin. Hollywood embraced his talent, but recoiled at his temper. Directors recalled explosive outbursts, crew members spoke of intimidation, and his fierce clashes with writers over racial stereotypes culminated in his firing after season 3. A devastating career blow that scarred his reputation as toxic talent. Attempts to rebound often failed. His 1980s film projects fizzled. His Broadway ambitions collapsed under poor ticket sales, and he gained a reputation for arrogance. His personal life mirrored the chaos. 2 marriages ended in bitter divorces, and his children grew distant, accusing him of emotional absence. The ugliest chapter surfaced in 2023, when public court documents revealed a family feud over his care, with accusations of financial exploitation and manipulation splashed across tabloids. Amos himself admitted in rare interviews that his rage had destroyed opportunities and relationships. Health problems dogged him, heart disease, surgeries, declining strength, but he fought to keep working, appearing sporadically on stage and in cameos. On August 21, 2024, he succumbed to congestive heart failure in New Jersey at 84. Despite decades of work, his estate, worth about $5 million, was modest compared to peers, complicated by legal disputes between family members. He left behind not just a legacy of strength on screen, but also a cautionary Hollywood tale. A man who fought for integrity, yet was consumed by temper, betrayal, and the relentless erosion of fame. Teddy Wilson, born December 10, 1943, burst onto good times in 1974 at the age of 31 as Sweet Daddy Williams, the velvet-tongued gangster in flashy suits whose charm masked menace. Sweet Daddy was more than a recurring antagonist. He was a seductive villain, the temptation of easy money given a face, and audiences adored the way Wilson made corruption stylish. Yet his off-screen journey was steeped in hardship. Growing up in Harlem in a cramped apartment, Wilson endured poverty and constant ridicule for his tall, thin frame, forcing him to build a persona of confidence to hide deep insecurities. The theater became his escape, and with the Negro Ensemble Company, he earned respect. But Hollywood trapped him in a cycle of hustler roles, refusing to see him as anything more. His professional life simmered with tension. Behind closed doors, colleagues spoke of his volatile temper, his refusal to tolerate producers who sought to water down black characters, and the rage he carried over projects that collapsed. His greatest professional heartbreak came when a network abruptly axed a pilot meant to star him, citing he was too street for Middle America, a rejection that left him bitter and distrustful. His marriage to actress Joan Pringle was passionate, but marred by rumors of infidelity and heated money disputes. Friends whispered that he occasionally dabbled in cocaine during Hollywood's hedonistic 1970s, though never proven, and he watched peers destroyed by addiction while fearing the same fate. His sudden death from a stroke on July 21, 1991, at only 47, left behind 3 children and a modest estate, reportedly less than $500,000. A paltry sum for a man who brought unforgettable life to one of television's most magnetic villains. His legacy lives not in wealth, but in the haunting memory of Sweet Daddy Williams, a role that defined him even as it confined him. Moses Gunn, born October 2, 1929, joined Good Times in 1977 at age 48 as Carl Dixon, the atheist shop owner whose romance with Florida Evans challenged the series' moral landscape. Carl was a layered, intellectual character, a man of principle who questioned faith and tradition, forcing audiences to confront uncomfortable truths. Off-screen, Gunn's own life was one long confrontation with hardship. Raised in St. Louis, his mother died when he was just 4, and he grew up bouncing between relatives, often mocked for his ragged clothes and withdrawn demeanor. His childhood wounds fueled a brooding anger that never truly left him. As an actor, Gunn achieved remarkable triumphs: an Obie Award, a Tony nomination, a Shakespearean reputation, but the industry often punished him for being too outspoken, too commanding, and unapologetically black. He was repeatedly turned away from film roles, labeled too intimidating, a euphemism for Hollywood's discomfort with his presence. His most painful professional failure came when he was dismissed from a major studio film after clashing with a director who accused him of threatening behavior, an incident that tarnished his reputation and cost him years of work. Gunn's personality was volcanic. colleagues whispered about his foul-mouthed rants and intense silences that left rehearsal rooms icy. His marriage to Gwendolyn Muma Landis was marked by separations, rumors of infidelity, and screaming arguments that sometimes erupted in front of peers. Friends spoke of Gunn's drinking and temper, which grew worse as he battled illness, particularly the asthma that would eventually kill him. He felt betrayed by an industry that exploited his gravitas but discarded him when his health faltered. By the late 1980s, his career had stalled, and the once great actor lived in frustration, haunted by the belief that he had been cheated of the stardom he deserved. On December 16, 1993, at 64, Gunn died of complications from asthma in Guilford, Connecticut, leaving behind modest assets reportedly under $500,000, a fraction of what his artistry merited. Helen Martin, born July 23, 1909, entered Good Times in 1974 at the age of 65, embodying Wanda Williams, the neighborhood's wailing woman whose over-the-top grief became a comedic signature. Viewers adored her loud sobbing and dramatic collapses, but the woman behind Wanda was far from the caricature she played. Born in St. Louis into a working-class family crushed by poverty, Helen grew up in a house that never seemed free of arguments and unpaid bills. Her father's heavy drinking and her mother's endless struggle to keep the family afloat left young Helen hardened, mocked for her odd looks and shrill voice, which she disguised behind a fierce willpower and obsession with theater. She clawed her way into the American Negro theater, but her path was marked with relentless rejection, directors berating her for being too abrasive, and white producers insisting she tone down her unapologetic presence. During the 1950s, she was secretly blacklisted after refusing advances from a producer, losing a dream role that could have changed her career. She was known to have a razor tongue, often mocking co-stars off-camera, and was infamous among stage crews for showing up late and storming off rehearsals when she felt disrespected. Her most humiliating career collapse came when she was abruptly dropped from a high-profile play after being accused of unprofessional behavior, though insiders whispered it was revenge by a powerful director she had publicly insulted. Her private life was equally turbulent: affairs with married men, a string of broken relationships, and constant loneliness disguised with humor. She leaned on marijuana heavily, openly admitting on TV she loved it, a confession that shocked audiences but revealed her indifference to Hollywood's judgment. Friends recalled she secretly envied strippers' financial independence and sometimes regretted not choosing that path. She endured the deaths of close confidants from drugs and crime, which deepened her mistrust and bitterness. Helen died on March 25, 2000 in Monterey, California, at age 90 from a heart attack, leaving behind an estate valued at around $3 million, largely in property and royalties, a stark contrast to her lifelong fear of ending broke. Ralph Carter, born May 30, 1961, was only 13 when he stepped into the role of Michael Evans on Good Times in 1974, instantly branded the militant voice of the Evans family and the youngest cast member. Michael, sharp-tongued and politically charged, was a revolutionary voice in sitcom form, quoting black leaders, challenging his parents, and forcing America to hear truths from the mouth of a child, which won him admiration and typecasting in the same breath. Carter's own childhood was harsher than the one written for Michael. The youngest of 5, raised in New York's public housing projects, he endured cruel jokes about his awkward features and hand-me-down clothes, learning to mask humiliation with bravado. Broadway crowned him a prodigy with Raisin, yet Hollywood locked him into a box he could never break. producers saw only the radical kid, never a future leading man. His 1975 album was promoted heavily, but its singles barely charted, and whispers about failed rehearsals and unprofessional late arrivals followed him. A disastrous comeback attempt in the late 1980s, where he was linked to shady managers and rumors of drug abuse, collapsed when his tour was canceled after 3 shows due to poor ticket sales, destroying his credibility. His personal life spiraled in parallel. His first marriage dissolved amid tabloid claims of cheating. His second brought ugly custody battles, and behind closed doors, friends described him as moody, temperamental, and nursing a dangerous resentment toward the industry that abandoned him. His siblings died young, deepening his bitterness, and he often retreated into church circles to rebuild identity, though financial instability never left him. Once rumored to have lost nearly everything to bad investments, Carter reinvented himself quietly as a family man. Yet estrangement with some of his 5 children added another silent wound. Now, 64, Carter lives quietly in New York, a faint echo of the child star he once was, with an estimated net worth around $1 million, an uncomfortable reminder of the millions his image generated in syndication, while he himself was left to struggle in the margins of fame. Bernadette Stanis, born December 22, 1953, was 21 when she appeared as Thelma Evans in 1974, the graceful daughter whose beauty, wit, and dignity made her the first black female teen idol on American television. On screen, Thelma was ambitious and intelligent, refusing to be boxed into stereotypes, and Stanis's performance gave young black women an aspirational figure never before seen on primetime sitcoms. Her personal upbringing, however, was scarred by hardship. Raised in the Brooklyn projects, she faced daily ridicule for being too ambitious, too proud, often mocked by peers for dressing above her means, and she learned to disguise her vulnerability with a polished exterior. Juilliard gave her training, but Hollywood was merciless, pressing her into glamour-based roles and branding her as the pretty girl while stripping away her serious aspirations. Tensions on the set of Good Times were whispered about. Alleged jealousies between her and Esther Rolle, rumored flirtations with male co-stars, and accusations that she used her beauty to gain favors with producers. Her greatest professional humiliation came with a failed pilot in the 1980s that critics derided as lifeless, a career killer that forced her into bankruptcy and left her scrambling for minor roles. In her personal life, chaos reigned. 4 marriages, each ending in bitterness, one ex-husband publicly accusing her of financial manipulation, another affair ending with tabloids hinting at infidelity, and divorces draining her finances. Though she reinvented herself as an author and speaker, promoting books on relationships and financial independence, her family life was shadowed by tragedy when her mother developed Alzheimer's, forcing Stanis into the role of caretaker and later activist, carrying deep trauma from watching a loved one fade. At 71, she continues to appear at conventions and public events, exuding the elegance that once defined Thelma. But behind it lies the memory of financial ruin, broken marriages, and battles to remain relevant in an industry that had already discarded her. With an estimated net worth of $6 million today, she maintains relative comfort. Yet her legacy is as much about survival in the ruthless cycle of Hollywood as it is about her pioneering role on Good Times. Jimmy Walker, born June 25, 1947, landed the role of James J.J. Evans Jr. in 1974 when he was 27, turning the phrase Dy-no-mite into a cultural detonation that made him instantly famous, yet also painted him into a caricature many co-stars despised. JJ was written as goofy, naive, and desperate for attention, which audiences loved. But John Amos and Esther Roll publicly complained that his clownish antics undercut the dignity of a black family trying to survive poverty, creating bitter on-set feuds. Behind the camera, Walker's early years in Brooklyn were marked by extreme hardship. His father's abandonment, bullying over his thin frame, and nights spent wondering if his family would eat the next day. That sense of hunger, literal and emotional, fueled his obsession with performing, but also hardened him into someone who kept people at arm's length. His career after Good Times collapsed under the weight of poor choices and arrogance. He refused roles he felt were beneath him, yet couldn't land the serious parts he craved. His 1980s sitcom, At Ease, was cancelled in humiliation, and whispers spread of him belittling writers and clashing with nearly everyone on set. He never married, and friends described him as cold, too proud to admit his loneliness, while tabloids once buzzed with bizarre rumors linking him to Ann Coulter, which both denied but never silenced. His greatest career failure was not one role, but a slow-burning irrelevance that left him wandering the comedy club circuit for decades. A living relic of one catchphrase. Financial mismanagement compounded his decline, and though he still performs, his net worth hovers around $800,000, a sobering figure for someone who once dominated prime time. At 78, Walker is alive but isolated, remembered with both affection and scorn, a man who achieved fame quickly but spent the rest of his life trying and failing to escape the shadow of J.J. Evans. Janet Jackson, born May 16, 1966, was only 11 when she stepped onto the Good Times set in 1977 as Penny Gordon Woods, a role that shocked viewers with its daring portrayal of a child suffering horrific abuse at the hands of her mother before being rescued by Willona. Penny's fragile smile and haunted eyes became one of the darkest storylines in sitcom history, and audiences were both horrified and moved. Yet behind Janet's powerful performance lay a childhood far from innocent. Growing up in Gary, Indiana, under the rule of Joe Jackson meant constant verbal attacks, body shaming, and relentless pressure to be perfect. On set, she was told to bind her chest and lose weight, messages that carved deep scars into her self-esteem. Her career exploded later, but not without brutal turbulence. Early albums faltered, and only after breaking from her father's control did she create control. Yet freedom came with new chains, lawsuits, predatory managers, and record labels eager to exploit her. Scandals followed relentlessly, the most infamous being the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show, when a wardrobe malfunction unleashed a storm of censorship, blacklisting, and humiliation that derailed her career for years. Her personal life was equally explosive. A secret teenage marriage to James DeBarge ended in annulment after rumors of drug use. Her marriage to Renee Elizondo ended with a $10 million lawsuit that publicly exposed her finances, and her union with billionaire Wissam Al-Mana dissolved in bitter custody battles. She has admitted to battles with depression, self-loathing, and isolation despite global fame. Death threats after the Super Bowl, constant scrutiny of her body, and whispers about estranged family members all left permanent scars. Yet she endured, reinvented herself, and built a fortune of over $180 million through relentless touring, business deals, and music royalties. Now 59, Janet lives with her young son, balancing motherhood with late career tours, her life a haunting paradox. Adored as a legend, yet forever haunted by scandals and the ghosts of a stolen childhood. Raymond Allen, born March 5, 1929, stepped into Good Times in 1974 at the age of 45 as Ned the Wino, a role that at first looked like comic relief but soon became a tragic mirror of inner-city America. Ned was a drunk, staggering through the Evans neighborhood, yet Allen delivered him with such unexpected poignancy that the character embodied both decay and resilience, often leaving the audience laughing and unsettled at the same time. Off-screen, Allen's own life seemed haunted by echoes of Ned's brokenness. Born into a working-class family in Kansas City, Missouri, Allen grew up amid poverty and instability, with a father who abandoned the family and a mother stretched beyond endurance, and his childhood was littered with humiliation from peers who mocked his shabby clothes and fragile health. When his career began, he found himself trapped in typecasting. Producers offered him wino and drifter parts, and every attempt to break out into serious drama was dismissed as unconvincing. There were whispers among crew members that he blurred reality and role, arriving on set looking exhausted and withdrawn, prompting rumors of alcoholism that he denied but never fully escaped. The biggest career collapse came when he lost a supporting role in a major 1980s sitcom after executives deemed him too unstable, a rejection that crushed his confidence and essentially ended his career. His marriage suffered under financial strain, punctuated by arguments and accusations of negligence, while children distanced themselves as Allen grew increasingly isolated. Retirement was not a choice, but a necessity after recurring pneumonia and bacterial infections left him physically frail and financially dependent on modest pensions. His life in later years was marked by endless hospital visits, the loneliness of nursing facilities, and the humiliation of being remembered only for a single caricature. On August 10, 2020, at age 91, he died of respiratory illness in California. His death quiet and unreported by most media outlets, his net worth estimated at less than $500,000, leaving behind no empire, only the bitter story of a man whose art reflected his suffering yet earned him little reward. Chip Fields, born August 5, 1951, entered Good Times in 1976 at age 25 as Lynella Gordon, Penny's abusive mother, and her chilling performance remains one of the most terrifying villain portrayals ever seen in a sitcom. On screen, she slapped, screamed, and terrorized a child, a role so raw that it left audiences gasping and Janet Jackson reportedly shaken even off-set. Yet Fields knew those emotions too well. Growing up in New York City, her own childhood was fractured by poverty and instability, forcing her into hustling jobs and early heartbreaks while dreaming of a career in music. She briefly sang with the Ronettes, but dreams of fame crumbled as her solo efforts went nowhere, a humiliating collapse that pushed her toward acting. Hollywood was cruel. She was typecast as angry women, and directors whispered about her temper and uncompromising attitude, which closed doors as quickly as it opened them. She pivoted to directing and coaching, but not without bruises. Whispers of infidelity and fractured relationships surrounded her personal life, and the burden of raising two daughters in the same brutal industry weighed heavily on her. The most painful irony was watching her daughter, Kim Fields, face similar pressures, while Chip tried to shield her from the mistakes she herself could not escape. Her biggest professional disappointment was the failed attempt to relaunch her music career, which ended in silence and regret, leaving her forever identified with a single villainous role. Though she avoided the public scandals of some peers, insiders knew her as volatile, a woman who demanded control yet often lost it behind closed doors. At 74, she lives quietly, with a modest net worth of about $1 million, earned from decades of scattered roles, coaching fees, and directing credits. She is not wealthy, not celebrated as a star, but her fingerprints are everywhere in Hollywood through the actors she has trained. For most, she will forever be the monstrous mother who burned audiences' memories. But for those who know her history, Chip Fields remains both a cautionary tale and a reminder of how Hollywood devours and reshapes its survivors. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgic journey through classic television history. If you enjoyed learning about the cast of Good Times and where they are now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more vintage Hollywood retrospectives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your memories and suggestions, so let us know which TV show or movie cast you'd like us to feature next.